The morning sun slips through the curtains. Margaret sits by the window, a cup of tea warming her hands. Her garden waits outside, filled with quiet life and untended flowers. She used to bend down and touch the soil, feeling its heartbeat. But lately, even reaching her toes feels like a mountain too high. Her back aches, a dull reminder of time's slow whisper. Every morning she promises to move more, to stretch again. Yet fear holds her still, wrapped in the memory of pain. She watches her grandson run across the yard, laughing freely. She wants to join him, but her body refuses to follow her heart. In that moment, something inside her stirs. A quiet voice says, "There must be another way." She sets her teacup down and takes a breath. The air feels new, alive with a hint of hope. Somewhere deep inside, she remembers movement can heal. It doesn't have to be fast or perfect. Just gentle. Just enough to begin again. And so, with trembling knees and a steady heart, Margaret stands. Her journey toward freedom starts with a single bend. The afternoon light was soft, spilling across the old wooden floor. Margaret stood in her living room, holding her lower back with both hands. A sharp ache spread through her spine every time she tried to straighten up. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath, feeling the heaviness settle in. For years she had ignored the stiffness, blaming it on age and busy days. But now, even the smallest movements felt like a quiet battle. Picking up a dropped spoon, tying her shoes, watering her plants. Each task carried a reminder of what she had lost. Her body had once been strong, graceful, dependable. Now it felt like a cage she didn't know how to open. She thought about the mornings in her garden, the smell of wet soil, the way she used to bend down, press her hands into the earth and smile. Those mornings had disappeared without warning, replaced by hesitation. She missed the rhythm of bending, standing, breathing, feeling alive. But she had grown careful, cautious, afraid of what one wrong move might do. Her daughter often told her to rest, to take it easy. Margaret listened, but rest only made her body stiffer. She began to wake up at night, her back tight, her legs numb with stillness. The clock on her nightstand glowed softly in the dark. Time passed, but her pain stayed, quiet and constant. One morning, she tried to stretch, as she had seen on television. She bent forward slightly, felt a pull and froze. The fear of pain was worse than the pain itself. So she stopped moving again. Her days became smaller, confined to the space between her chair and her bed. The television filled the silence, but it couldn't touch the ache in her body. She watched others live their lives, while hers seemed to slow to a crawl. Still inside her, a small spark remained. She remembered how movement used to feel like freedom. How her body once knew the rhythm of life through every muscle and joint. She missed that connection, not just to her body, but to herself. Her grandson, Leo, came to visit one Sunday. He was 6, full of energy and laughter that filled the house. "Grandma, come play catch," he shouted, tossing a small ball toward her. The ball rolled to her feet, and she hesitated. Her hands trembled as she reached down, her back stiff, her breath caught. The ball slipped away, and she let it go. Leo didn't notice. He was already running across the yard again. But she noticed. Her heart sank with a quiet sadness she couldn't hide. She whispered to herself, "I can't even pick up a ball." That moment stayed with her long after Leo went home. It echoed in her chest like a promise waiting to be kept. Something had to change. She didn't know where to begin, but she knew she couldn't stay still anymore. The next morning she stood by the window again, watching the sun rise. The light fell across her hands, warm and gentle like an invitation. And somewhere in that soft light, a new thought began to form. Maybe healing didn't start with strength. Maybe it started with courage. A week later, Margaret's daughter convinced her to join a senior wellness class. She hesitated at first, gripping her walking cane tightly. The word class sounded too big, too active, too far from what she could do. But her daughter smiled and said softly, "Just try, Mom. You don't have to do everything." So Margaret agreed, her heart heavy with doubt but curious enough to go. The center was bright, filled with sunlight and laughter that felt both strange and kind. She saw people her age, some even older, moving slowly but with intention. Their faces showed effort but also peace. A man greeted her with a gentle nod, and a woman waved from across the room. For the first time in months, Margaret didn't feel alone in her struggle. Then Dr. Allen appeared, calm and smiling, his voice soft but full of confidence. He wasn't the kind of instructor who shouted commands. He moved slowly, deliberately, like every gesture carried purpose. "Welcome," he said. "Today we'll learn how to move without fear." His words landed deep inside Margaret's chest. Move without fear. It sounded impossible, yet strangely hopeful. Dr. Allen asked everyone to stand, feet shoulder-width apart, hands resting by their sides. He demonstrated a gentle motion, bending the knees slightly, reaching toward the toes. No forcing, no pain, just breathing through the movement. He called it the knee-to-toe bend. Margaret watched uncertain. Her body had forgotten what bending felt like without pain. Still she tried. Her knees shook, her breath came uneven, but she moved. Just a little. Dr. Allen noticed her effort and smiled. "Beautiful, Margaret," he said, his tone warm and reassuring. "It's not about how far you go. It's about waking up your body again." The words settled into her like sunlight through glass. She felt something shift, not in her back but in her mind. She wasn't fighting her body anymore. She was listening to it. Dr. Allen walked around the group, reminding them to breathe deeply. "To heal," he said, "we must first remember that we can move." Margaret's arms loosened. Her back began to warm, her heart beat slower. For the first time in years, she didn't feel broken. She felt present. Every small bend was a conversation between her and her body. The stiffness didn't vanish, but it softened, as if it finally felt heard. After the session ended, Margaret sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees. She looked around at the others, smiling, stretching, sharing small victories. Something inside her awakened, fragile but steady. Maybe this was the beginning she'd been waiting for. Dr. Allen walked by and said gently, "Keep doing it, even for a minute a day." She nodded, her eyes glistening with something like gratitude. Outside, the sky had turned golden. She stepped into the sunlight, breathing in deeply. For the first time in a long while, Margaret felt taller, lighter, alive. The next morning, Margaret stood in front of her mirror, barefoot on the carpet. The house was quiet, wrapped in the soft light of dawn. She could still hear Dr. Allen's voice in her mind, calm and steady. "Breathe in and let your body follow your breath." She inhaled deeply, her chest rising with the rhythm of that memory. Her knees trembled slightly, unsure of what was coming next. But she remembered his smile, and that gave her courage. She placed her feet shoulder-width apart, just like he had shown. Her toes gripped the floor, grounding her to the moment. She bent her knees gently, only a little, and let her hands slide down her thighs. Her back felt tight but not painful. She stopped when she felt the pull and held the position. The air moved slowly in and out of her lungs. Her reflection showed effort, but also something softer, determination. For the first time, she didn't rush to stand up again. She let her body speak. Her spine stretched, her muscles whispered their slow awakening. It was not about how far she reached, but how deeply she breathed. Dr. Allen's words echoed, "Every small movement is a victory." Margaret smiled at her reflection, the corners of her eyes warm. She stood up slowly, exhaling the stiffness with her breath. Then she tried again. This time, her hands reached a bit lower. Her fingertips brushed the top of her knees, and she laughed softly. It wasn't much, but it was progress. She could feel something shifting inside her, a quiet sense of possibility. Her back, once heavy and silent, began to feel alive again. Each bend carried a rhythm, a pulse of life returning to her limbs. After a few repetitions, she sat down on her chair, breathing hard but smiling. Her heartbeat was strong, her mind clear. It had been years since she felt this kind of joy. A joy that came not from doing something big, but something honest. Movement, she realized, was a form of trust. Trusting her body to respond. Trusting herself to begin again. She looked around her living room, the light now brighter through the window. Her plants glowed with morning dew, their leaves reaching for the sun. She whispered, "We're all just trying to grow, aren't we?" The room felt lighter, filled with quiet pride. She wrote a small note in her journal before breakfast. Knee to toe bends day one. It hurts less than I thought. I feel alive. Her handwriting wobbled, but her spirit stood tall. That morning she didn't need a doctor or a miracle. Just breath, patience, and a bit of courage. As she placed her pen down, she caught her reflection again. The woman looking back wasn't weak or broken. She was beginning. And beginnings, Margaret realized, are always the hardest part. Yet they are also the most beautiful. A week passed, and Margaret's mornings began to feel different. The ache in her back hadn't disappeared, but it no longer ruled her days. Each sunrise became a quiet invitation to move, to breathe, to try again. She no longer hesitated when she stood before the mirror. Her feet found their place on the floor, steady and sure. The routine had become familiar, almost comforting. Knees bending, breath flowing, hands gliding down her legs in rhythm. Sometimes she reached her toes, sometimes she stopped halfway. It didn't matter. Each bend felt like a small promise kept. Her body was remembering its language. The stiffness that once felt permanent now loosened with each gentle motion. She felt the warmth spreading through her back like a slow sunrise. Even her balance had improved. She could stand longer, steadier, more connected to the ground beneath her. Dr. Allen's voice still lived in her memory. "Consistency heals faster than force," he had said with a knowing smile. Margaret carried those words with her like a quiet mantra. Some mornings she played soft music as she moved. The sound filled the room, blending with her breath. It turned her exercise into something peaceful, almost sacred. There was grace in her slowness, strength in her gentleness. After each session, she would stand tall, close her eyes, and smile. The world felt a little lighter when her body didn't resist it. Her daughter noticed the change before Margaret said a word. "Mom, you're moving better," she said one afternoon, surprised. Margaret laughed, touching her back with a playful grin. "I'm practicing my magic," she joked, and they both smiled. In truth, it did feel like magic, slow, invisible but real. The fear that once held her still was fading. She could bend to pick up a dropped towel or reach for a low shelf. Little victories, but they meant everything. She even went back to her garden, gloves in hand, sun on her face. The soil was cool, soft, and forgiving beneath her fingers. She bent down carefully, feeling the stretch in her back. It didn't hurt. She smiled so wide she almost laughed out loud. The flowers swayed gently beside her, as if cheering her on. She stayed there for a while, pulling weeds, trimming leaves, breathing freely. The garden had waited for her, patient and silent like an old friend. By evening, her body felt tired but alive. The kind of tired that comes from living, not hurting. She sat on her porch, sipping tea, watching the sky turn gold and violet. Her movements were no longer clumsy or fearful. They were graceful, certain her own. In that moment, she realized healing wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about finding harmony again between effort and ease, strength and rest. Margaret leaned back in her chair, her heart calm and full. Tomorrow she thought she would bend again. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Margaret's progress caught Dr. Allen's attention during her next visit. He smiled as she moved, her posture taller, her motions more fluid. "You've been practicing," he said warmly, watching her complete a bend. She nodded, a little shy but proud. "I do it every morning now. It feels like my body is waking up." Dr. Allen laughed softly. "That's exactly what it's doing. You're retraining your body to remember." He guided her to a nearby chair, inviting her to sit as he explained. "Our joints love movement," he said. "It keeps them alive like oil in a hinge. When we stop moving, they stiffen, but gentle motion keeps them young." Margaret listened carefully, her eyes bright with curiosity. She had never thought of her body as something that could learn again. Dr. Allen continued, drawing a small diagram on a notepad. "These bends do more than stretch your back," he said thoughtfully. "They strengthen your core, improve balance, and support your spine." He pointed to the drawing, showing how muscles work together. "When you bend, your lower back and abdominal muscles share the load. That balance reduces strain and keeps your spine aligned." Margaret leaned closer, fascinated by the simplicity of it all. "So it's not just about touching my toes?" she asked with a soft smile. Dr. Allen shook his head. "It's about connection between your breath, your muscles, and your movement." He asked her to stand again and demonstrate one slow bend. She inhaled, bent her knees slightly, exhaled as her hands reached downward. Her movement was smooth, her breathing calm. "Perfect," he said gently. "That's exactly how healing looks." She felt warmth in her chest at those words. Healing, not a dream anymore, but something she could feel. Dr. Allen reminded her that consistency mattered more than intensity. "Small, steady steps," he said. "That's the secret your body loves most." He told her that movement increases blood flow and releases tension. It nourishes tissues, delivers oxygen, and helps muscles stay flexible. Even the brain benefits, calming stress and lifting mood. Margaret smiled, realizing her morning routine was doing more than she knew. She wasn't just easing pain, she was strengthening life itself. As she left the clinic, she felt lighter, both in body and spirit. Outside, a gentle breeze brushed against her face. She walked without hurrying, her steps steady and sure. Each footfall echoed softly on the pavement, rhythmic and alive. For the first time in years, she trusted her body to carry her forward. She didn't feel fragile anymore. She felt capable. That evening, she shared what she'd learned with her daughter. "It's amazing," she said, "how the body listens when you move kindly." Her daughter hugged her, tears shining in her eyes. Margaret held her close, whispering, "It's never too late to begin again." That night she slept deeply, her breath slow and peaceful. Her body, once burdened by pain, was now learning the language of freedom. And her heart, for the first time in a long while, was completely at ease. Weeks passed, and Margaret's mornings became her favorite time of day. The routine had turned into a quiet ritual, simple yet sacred. She no longer needed reminders or courage to begin. Her body asked for movement the way the heart asks for breath. Each bend felt easier, smoother, filled with quiet confidence. She could now reach her toes, her fingertips brushing them like an old friend. Sometimes she laughed softly when she caught her reflection mid-bend. The woman she saw wasn't fragile anymore. She looked steady, alive, full of grace. Even her walk had changed, slower, but with rhythm and purpose. Her back pain had faded into something distant, almost forgotten. When she gardened, she could kneel again, her hands deep in the earth. The soil no longer felt out of reach. It felt like home. Her grandson Leo came over one bright afternoon. "Grandma, let's play catch," he shouted, holding a bright red ball. This time, Margaret didn't hesitate. She bent down, picked up the ball, and threw it back with a laugh. Leo's eyes lit up, surprised and delighted. "You did it, Grandma," he said, clapping his hands. She smiled, her heart blooming like the roses behind her. They played for a while, laughter mixing with the hum of summer air. For Margaret, every throw was a victory, every catch a gift. Later, as the sun dipped low, she sat beside Leo under the oak tree. He rested his head on her shoulder, tired but happy. "Your garden smells nice," he whispered. Margaret smiled, feeling her chest fill with warmth. "It smells like life," she said softly. That night she wrote again in her journal. "Knee to toe bends day 45. I feel strong. I played with Leo today." Her handwriting was firm, steady, alive with gratitude. She thought of Dr. Allen's words, how movement connects breath and body. Now she understood what he truly meant. It wasn't just about the muscles or the spine. It was about trust, patience, and kindness toward oneself. Every gentle bend had been a small act of healing. Not just for her back, but for her spirit. She realized that growing older wasn't about losing things. It was about learning to move differently, to live slower but deeper, to find beauty in what the body can still do. In the quiet of her room, she stood once more. Her hands rested on her thighs, her breath steady and calm. She bent forward, slow and sure, her fingers touching her toes. No pain, just peace. She stayed there for a moment, breathing in the stillness. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Margaret whispered, "Thank you, body. Thank you for coming back to me." When she stood again, she felt taller, stronger, whole. The woman who once feared movement now found freedom in it. And with each sunrise, she knew she would bend again. Not to fight age, but to celebrate it, one gentle breath at a time. The morning light spills gently across Margaret's kitchen table. Her teacup steams beside her journal, its pages filled with quiet victories. Each line tells a story of patience, courage, and small beginnings. She reads her own words and smiles, feeling gratitude rise like the dawn. Her back feels strong now, her breath deep and unhurried. The ache that once ruled her life has turned into memory. Outside, her garden blooms again, alive with color and movement. She opens the door and steps out, barefoot on the soft grass. The earth greets her, cool and kind beneath her feet. She bends once more, her hands brushing the petals of a flower. It feels effortless, natural, full of quiet grace. Margaret closes her eyes and listens to the rhythm of her breath. It's steady, peaceful, full of life. She whispers softly, "I can move, I can live, I am free." The wind stirs the leaves, as if answering her in return. She stands tall, her heart light, her spirit steady. Every bend, every breath has brought her here. To this simple truth, healing begins with hope. And hope once found never truly leaves.